everybody. Welcome to the briefing room. I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. Great to have you with us on this Wednesday. We begin out west in the fire emergency taking over California at this hour. The scenes out there are simply incredible, coming in many ways historic. Take a look at this. Hurricane-force winds, bone-dry air, fueling fires in 9 different locations across the state. The flames here closing in on the 405 just around Los Angeles. They're devastating neighborhoods in that area. The newest fire today broke out in Simi Valley. That's where you can see the flames through the windows of the Reagan Presidential Library. That's Air Force One out there, the 707 version of it. Smoke from those fires choking many farms and communities nearby. This resident trying to take care of a horse that's struggling to breathe. And the biggest threat, though, remains because of scenes like this one. It's an incredible image of embers blowing off a burning tree. Those embers starting new fires across the region, being spread by that hurricane-force wind. And that's where our Matt Gutman got a taste of it a short time ago.
You can hear horses. You can hear horses in there, but it's hard to tell what their condition is or if they've been released from their pens. Now firefighters are arriving. With this wind, there's not much at this point.
Our thanks to Matt for that. The wind there, an incredible sound. Marcy Gonzalez, another member of our team, is also on the front lines of the fires that those winds are fanning. She just sent in this report a short time ago.
Devin, this is just some of the destruction left behind from the Getty fire here in Brentwood, California, where, of course, so many celebrities have homes. Just on this street, we're seeing house after house with devastation like this. This one, all that's really left is the entryway. A dozen homes here in Brentwood were destroyed. 5 others were damaged. And this was another wind-driven fire, like several others that are burning right now here in Southern California. There is an extreme red flag warning in effect. We're seeing gusts up to 80 miles an hour. Now, here in Brentwood, we're learning the cause of this fire, the strong winds picking up a tree branch and flinging it into activated power lines, which then sparked and sent those flames spreading fast. There are thousands of people here in the Los Angeles area still under mandatory evacuation orders, and this extreme wind event isn't expected to let up here until tomorrow. Devin?
And thanks to Marcy Gonzalez for that. Let's go to Thousand Oaks, California. That's where Romina Puga is standing by at an evacuation center with a number of residents. Romina, how are they coping with these fires there?
Devin, we're here at the Thousand Oaks Evacuation Center, like you said. These are evacuees from the Simi Valley fire. This is Elena and Megan. Can you talk to us about what it was like this morning? How much time did you have to get out? What did you grab?
It was something that happened very quickly. I think first when we got our voluntary evacuation, and then within half an hour, 45 minutes, we got the mandatory. And this is something that we took it really seriously for the first time. And we just had to take care of everything within 45 minutes, what to take, where to go, what do we need to do, answer the phone calls, and it was very terrifying.
Do you feel safe now here? You're here with your daughter.
Absolutely, and luckily my husband is in town. He travels a lot, and we are all together. We stay together. We got a lot of friends calling us, asking us to go to them, but I really appreciate it. But it's really safe here. Red Cross is helping us a lot. Other companies, they're giving here the TV and the news are all here, as you know, and we get the best here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Devin, I just want to introduce you to a couple that was also evacuated last year with the Woolsey fire. They were evacuated for the earthquake over the summer. You guys are no strangers to evacuating under short notice. How do you guys prepare for this normal way of life now?
Normally we have in the garage a brand new garbage can with clothes. Medications go last, but clothes and all the things you would think you would need are kept in the garage. An earthquake hit.
Mostly for earthquake readiness, but of course it comes in handy for fires,
And last year, you guys were evacuated for 2 days. What are you anticipating this year? Are you prepared to be away from your home for multiple days? What's going on in your head?
We're glad to be alive, and if that's where the firemen need us, then we are happy to oblige. I mean, what can you do? And the people here at the centre are being absolutely wonderful to all of us.
That's great.
They're great meals. I'm not having to cook.
That's
so
good to hear.
You take it that what is your life worth against what is your house worth, and there's no choice.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. Devin, this is what's happening here at this evacuation center in Thousand Oaks.
Romina, thanks so much. Those folks finding a silver lining in this, in a sense of humor, just happy to be alive. We'll have more coverage of the fires in California, a special edition of World News Prime tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on ABC News Live. Turning now to the impeachment inquiry up on Capitol Hill today as Democrats prepare to begin holding the first public impeachment hearings. They're also set to hold a vote tomorrow authorizing the new phase in the impeachment probe. ABC's Trish Turner joins us now live from Capitol Hill on the latest developments. Also, Jordan Phelps, our White House reporter, is there. Jordan, I want to start with you because you've been taking a close look today at where public sentiment stands as we head into this new phase of impeachment and checking in on the impeachment tracker with our friends at 538.
Yeah, Devin, our friends at 538 find that there is a majority support for the impeachment inquiry that's held steady for most of October. The number sets at about 51%. So just about over half of the country seems to support this inquiry, at least going forward. Devin, what is really notable that we should zero in here on is the numbers among independents. We've seen a real significant uptick among those prospective voters who don't have allegiance to either party since all this news started breaking in late September. On September 20th, just 34% of independents supported this idea of an inquiry. Devin, that number now stands at 46%. So we've seen at least a 12-point jump there. That, of course, is significant because looking ahead to next election, this suggests that those independent voters, those who aren't necessarily going to vote one way or the other, haven't soured on this idea of the impeachment. So it hasn't damaged the Democrats in their eyes. And of course, we know that has been Nancy Pelosi's big concern all along, is how does an impeachment hurt her vulnerable Democrats?
So steady support for the investigation, which is a month old now, Jordan, but we've been wondering here in the briefing room, what exactly do people want to know as investigators go forward? We put that question today to some residents here in Washington, D.C.
I would like to know why more of the people around Trump who saw all of this have not come forward to testify about it.
I want to know, going way back on all the Russian things and the Ukrainian things, and why that started in the first place.
Well, I'd just like to learn how many people heard Trump actually say that he wanted information on Biden, because I think that's pretty bad.
All right, let's bring in Trish Turner on Capitol Hill. Trish, the whistleblower that got all this started said half a dozen White House officials were concerned about the president's behavior towards Ukraine. How many witnesses have actually been deposed so far? How many people, to the questions that those voters put out there, how many people could we still hear from on this?
Great questions. So we've had 10 depositions so far, all behind closed doors. A number of officials who were supposed to be deposed behind closed doors have refused to come. In fact, tomorrow we're going to get a court case in which we'll hear about one key advisor who is asking a federal judge if he has to comply with a congressional subpoena. So we'll be all eyes on that. So 10 so far, probably about a handful we expect to happen before the public hearings start, the next phase of this investigation. And yeah, so it's moving into a public phase. We've gotten to a point now where we're hearing from some people who are lower on the totem pole, but they worked for key officials in this particular inquiry.
And Jordan, yesterday we heard for the first time directly from a White House official on that controversial phone call with President Trump and the Ukrainian president. Why was his testimony so significant? What did we learn from his testimony?
Well, Devin, he was actually on that phone call, and he said he was so concerned by what he heard that he brought it to a White House lawyer. Now, what's interesting here is that he revealed that those ellipses in this reconstructed transcript that the White House has given us actually do contain what he said were significant mentions in that phone call. The New York Times has more detailed reporting on this. They say that the president also talked about recordings by Vice President Joe Biden, and that President Zelensky specifically mentioned Burisma, that energy company that Vice President Biden's son, Hunter, was involved with. So that would indicate that there were some significant omissions in that transcript, which contradicts what the White House has told us. Devin, on September 25th, an official told us the ellipses do not indicate missing words or phrases. They refer to trailing off or voice pauses. If there were missing words or phrases, they would be represented by brackets or redactions. So this, of course, a direct contradiction to what the White House has been telling us, Devin. And so far, they haven't responded to us today on these significant missing pieces of information as alleged here.
Each day, we're getting a fuller picture of the Ukraine policy from this administration. A lot of questions, a lot of witnesses still to come. Trish Turner on Capitol Hill, Jordan Phelps at the White House. Thank you both so much. To the border now, and an eye-opening new look at just how significant, how historic that migrant crisis was down there over the course of the past year. The Department of Homeland Security says a record 76,000 children were apprehended along the border in 2019. That's more children detained in U.S. custody at the border than at any time in recorded history. And all told, more than 600,000 family and children combined were stopped at the border, taxing those Border Patrol agents, filling those detention centers, as we've seen in pictures, and creating huge backlogs in immigration courts. So have we stemmed the tide? Have we turned a corner? What are conditions like down there right now? Well, we're pleased to be joined by U.S. Border Patrol Chief Border Patrol Agent for the Del Rio sector, Raul Ortiz. Sir, thank you so much for coming in via Skype as we get this snapshot, statistically at least, of the fiscal year you just lived through. Are you still in crisis mode down there right now? Give us the latest.
Yeah, we're still experiencing a high volume of traffic coming in between the ports of entry here in South Texas. You know, right now we're about 60% higher than we were at the same time last year. We finished up the year 250% higher than we were the previous year, with about 58,000 apprehensions. So we still have an awful lot of work to do on the border here.
Wow. And what can you tell us about the state of border fencing, border wall in your sector? You oversee about 210 miles in Texas along the Rio Grande there. What's the state of that construction? Do you need more fence built there?
Yeah, currently in our sector, we have about 4 miles of fencing. We are in the planning phases of constructing new fence within the South Texas corridor. That goes all the way from the mouth of the Rio Grande up to West Texas. And so, in fact, today we are installing panels in South Texas. So all of that is going to help improve the border security situation here all along the southwest border.
And sir, as we saw today, a number of your superiors from Homeland Security, Border Patrol up in Congress sort of gridlocked at the moment on a number of policy priorities. How frustrated are you at the lack of attention from official Washington and/or the need for more resources? What do you want from the policymakers here?
Well, certainly, I think there's an opportunity to close some of the legislative loopholes that exist out there. We've got some great partnerships with the government of Mexico, Central American countries. We have seen a reduction in traffic over the first month of the fiscal year. So all of these efforts are starting to have an impact and are starting to take hold. Awfully proud of the work that the men and women of CBP and DHS are doing against this front. But certainly, I think there's got to be some legislative fixes.
Do I read you correctly that it sounds like you feel optimistic enough that you have sort of turned a corner on the crisis we've seen the past year?
Yeah, we've instituted the migrant protection protocols. So we're processing folks and returning them back to Mexico to await their asylum hearing. And I think that's having a significant impact on the flow. We're seeing less family units and unaccompanied children cross in between the ports of entry. And we're able to get our agents out on the front lines to address some of the opioid issues that are facing our communities. We've seen an uptick in narcotic seizures here in Texas and across the entire southwest border. So we're going to focus on this border security mission, yet still have to manage the humanitarian crisis that exists at our feet.
Sir, we so appreciate hearing from you directly. Raul Ortiz, the chief agent for the Del Rio sector of the U.S. Border Patrol. Thank you so much, sir, for your time this afternoon. And let's bring in our immigration reporter here at ABC News. Quinn Owen is here. Quinn, I want to get your reaction to what we heard from Chief Ortiz there. He does seem to sound relatively optimistic as we head into border crossing season now that the temperatures go down, that they're much better equipped this year.
That's right. He does sound optimistic because they're coming off of huge record numbers crossing earlier this year, right? Now, if we look at the numbers, though, for this month, for the past month, the most recent numbers, they're still much higher than what we saw this time last year. Still record-setting. That's exactly right.
Let's turn to, on the topic of immigration, some fireworks on Capitol Hill today on this subject, specifically with some of the leadership of Homeland Security today. We saw the acting head of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services take some questions about the immigration's attempt to turn back a policy that would protect migrant children, other children that are receiving medical care here. I want to play for our viewers a fiery exchange that Ken Cuccinelli, the acting director, had with Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida.
You and Mr. Trump don't want anyone who looks or talks differently than Caucasian Americans to be allowed into this country.
That's false.
I'm sorry. Please don't interrupt me. And you have demonstrated that you will pursue this heinous white supremacist ideology at all costs, even if it means making critically ill children your collateral damage in the process.
After declaring that I am not a white supremacist, as you alluded,
you have had white supremacist
nor is the
policies.
president.
Okay.
Cuccinelli taking a lot of heat. He's trying to get the top job at Homeland Security. What did you make of that? Did he explain why the administration wanted to deport all of these sick children that have been protected for years?
So from his perspective, it's about whether or not they're going to refrain from deporting them, right? So this was the application process to get your deportation orders stayed for a couple of years so you could stay in the country, get this medical treatment. It was something that Cuccinelli and the administration tried in August, but after a congressional hearing where we saw some of the children who were being affected by this policy, after that happened, then the administration actually rolled back that policy. Homeland Security Secretary, Acting Secretary Kevin McAleenan ended up stepping in himself to say, hey, USCIS, which is one of his agencies that he oversees, you're going to have to roll this back. He issued we saw a memo at that hearing where he said that they must start accepting these applications as they did before.
So a rollback of policy there. So we should say that policy is still in place, but after a lot of outcry, got that thing stopped. It was in some fireworks.
A lot of outcry, and notably, Cuccinelli did take sole responsibility for rescinding the policy in the first place tonight. He was pressed on whether or not the White House had any involvement, but he said that came from him, and he didn't express any regrets for rescinding it originally, but he did say they should not have interrupted people who had pending applications.
Quinn Owen, our immigration reporter. Thanks so much, Quinn. As always, to Chicago now, and a huge headache for families and children in that city, the nation's third largest school district. A strike of public school teachers, more than 25,000 union members there, has now canceled classes for a 10th straight day. Parents are having to scramble there to get their kids care, some spinning their wheels at home, although today the school board allowed some football players to go back to practice. Teachers, of course, growing frustrated as well. Grueling impact on everybody. We're joined now by two figures in this mess. Amy Lawless, she's the parent of a junior at Lane Tech College Prep High School in Chicago. Also joined by Chicago public school teacher Daniel Bender. He's a 9th grade social studies teacher at Lakeview High School. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Daniel, I want to start with you as a teacher in the district. Help us understand what this strike is all about and what teachers are hoping for here.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. What teachers are striking for today is for better ways to support our students, the students of Chicago across all areas of the city, from the north side, south side, west side, everywhere. We want to make sure that we have the resources to keep our class sizes manageable so that we can have plenty of one-on-one time with the students that everyone in the city cares so much about.
And as I understand it, and we're seeing on the screen now, some of the sticking points in this negotiation, obviously pay is one of them, but it's also struck Chicago teachers are really pushing for smaller class sizes and more resources for students, particularly when it comes to mental health.
Yeah, it's a real shame that this is really the only way to fight for these students and to make sure that they have all the support that they can get. It shouldn't have to be this way. We should be able to go up to the powers that be and say, this is what we need to make sure that every student of Chicago can succeed. And they say, here, great, we support that. Instead, we have a mayor who's frankly betrayed us, who said that there's not going to be a strike on her watch and has now carried on a 10-day strike and counting. And she's not giving us any of the things she promised.
Yeah, Lori Lightfoot, the new mayor of Chicago, in a bit of a bind there, trying to thread the needle on this one. Amy, let's bring you into the conversation. You have had several kids, raised them in the Chicago school districts, been through a couple of strikes already. How does this strike compare for you? What's the biggest impact on your family and other families?
Well, I have 2 kids off at college, so now this one's a little easier. My youngest is a junior, so it's not impacting me like a lot of families who have to worry about childcare. And I know a lot of, the schools are open, but, I mean, people that have to go to work and their kids maybe don't want to be home and all of that. But, this is junior year for us, too, so I worry about her falling behind. And, they were supposed to take a practice SAT this morning. That got canceled. We're looking at college, and these kids have been out of school for 10 days and with nothing to do. I mean, there's,
What is your child doing all day?
Sleeping. I'm trying to get her to help around my house because I still am going to work. My husband's still working, and they're just not doing anything. I don't know if anything was assigned before the strike because we did know this was talked about coming. This is like our 3rd strike, I think, in our family.
And what's your message to both sides in this, Amy? As we just heard from Daniel there, teachers frustrated, yeah. The mayor is frustrated. What would you say to both those sides if you were in the room?
I would say we have to find a way to come together and end this. I mean, promises were made 1,000,000 years ago to teachers that are still in the system, and those financial problems are continuing with new hires and things that are going forward. I think it will eventually work itself out. But in the meantime, my youngest had 42 kids in her kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade classrooms, and that's just too many kids for the teachers to get their jobs done.
Yeah, and Daniel, how optimistic are you that a deal is close? There's been some chatter today that something could be imminent.
I hope so. I mean, we're taxpayers, too. We've got children that are out of school. We want this finished up as soon as possible so we can get out there and supporting the kids like we've always wanted to.
All right, let's hope for a quick outcome to this thing. Amy Lawless, a parent in the Chicago Public School District, and Daniel Bender, a teacher in Chicago Public Schools. Appreciate both of you very much for your time this afternoon. Thanks for coming on ABC News Live. Finally, today we turn to Portraits in Courage. That's the name of a new traveling exhibit of artwork produced by former President George W. Bush. These are paintings of service members in the United States military that the former president has done. You see a picture here in his Texas studio. He's doing this project to promote their commitment to service, their sacrifice, and get more Americans taking a closer look at it. Our producer, Bobby Galen, went over to the Kennedy Center here in D.C. to get a closer look.
Thought it was very appropriate to have a living president exhibit his artwork at a presidential memorial.
He has some mountain bike events and some golfing events as well, so I've had the honor of participating in 2, but that is the first chance where I met and interacted with the president, and the relationship that came from that, and then ultimately the painting that's behind us. He had a nickname for me. He has a nickname for me. I guess he called me Hollywood, so he said, "Hey, Hollywood, I'm going to paint your picture." And at the time, I didn't even know he was actually doing the paintings and making the book. So
we've had a tremendous response. We've had over 6,000 people in the first 2 weeks come to visit this exhibit.
Of course, for everybody, all 98 of the veterans that were painted and that the president did the portraits of, it's extremely meaningful to have your former commander-in-chief do that, take the time to do that. And I think with each one of these paintings, of course, there's a story that comes with every life that was touched. I'm humbled to be even on the same pages with some of the heroes that, that their lives were touched and their stories were told. So it's a deep sense of appreciation for President Bush, who he was as a president, and then who he is now, and this ongoing concern that he has for the veteran community that he led for so long. So it's thank you to the president.
And Bobby Galen joins us now. Bobby, pretty neat to see those veterans. You talked to a bunch of veterans there. Were all of them how were they approached by President Bush? Did they say how this all came to be?
Yeah, Devin, so in this individual case, I had the chance to speak with Lieutenant Colonel Kent Solheim, who we saw in the piece. And so his background is that he was deployed 8 times to Iraq, Afghanistan, and parts of northern Africa. And unfortunately, he did lose his right leg due to combat injuries. And part of his recovery is that he was very interested in mountain biking. And President Bush had some mountain bike charity events.
Big biking enthusiast.
Yeah, and the two kind of sparked their relationship at one of his events, and it led to President Bush painting his portrait. And similar events like that with other veterans, just President Bush sparking these relationships and painting their portraits.
And this is a traveling exhibit. It's starting and debuting here in Washington at the Kennedy Center's new Reach arm of the complex. It's a new museum there. Where is it going to go from here?
So it's right now at the Kennedy Center. It started at the Bush Presidential Center, and the next stop it's going to Bentonville, Arkansas. So it's going to be a traveling exhibit. Mid-November is when it's going to move on.
Bobby, thanks for bringing that to us. A neat story. Finally today, just a note of breaking news before we leave you here up on Capitol Hill with the impeachment inquiry. The House investigators conducting depositions have just sent out notices that they plan to interview former National Security Advisor John Bolton as part of their probe into possible impeachment of President Trump. This would be the highest-ranking official inside the White House, current or former, to sit for a deposition before House investigators. That would be quite significant. Said to be happening next month. Of course, we know that the White House has been challenging a number of these requests and could possibly contest Bolton's appearance. But at this hour, our Trish Turner reporting now that John Bolton is on the list. Bolton, of course, raising some red flags about the president's policy toward the Ukraine. Well, thank you for joining us here today in the briefing room on ABC News Live. We're here every day, 3:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 and 6:30 as well. You can download and watch us on the ABC News app. Download it onto your phone. There's a live button at the bottom. You can watch us commercial-free. We're also on Hulu and Roku if you like to watch from home. Hope to see you right back here tomorrow. I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. Have a good afternoon.